I'm Jamie Allison, and this is the Big Idea, Big Moves podcast. This is the destination for high performers and people looking for whole life success. And so we talk to people from different genres, just people doing really interesting things in their space, and find out a little bit about their journey and what they've been doing, but also hopefully take some of those things away and apply them to our own lives as well. So we talk to entrepreneurs, lots of athletes, CEOs, just again, we've talked to scientists, we've talked to just people in really interesting kind of areas to find out about what they're doing, and hopefully again we can pull some of those things into our own lives as well. Just before we jump into today's interview, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you know that we are often connected with Thirdsy. Thirdsy creates some natural products that help athletes and high performers get better quality rest and recovery from physical and mental stress. And that can be high performers. It could be, elite athletes, things like that. We have had some of those that do the same thing as well, because they have a PM recovery collagen that's melatonin free, it's sedative free, and just helps you get better rest while supporting joint and muscle repair as well. So take a look if it's something that interests you. You can go through our Instagram bio, and there's a link through there. And if you put BIBM20 in, you can get 20% off, or just go directly to thirdsy.com and check it out and see if it's something that you're interested in. So today, really excited to have our guest today. She's Tasha Star. She's a real force in the fitness and wellness world. She's been a Canadian bodybuilding competitor, respected fitness influencer. She has a big space there. And she's founder of Tasha Star Fitness, where she's helped hundreds of clients transform not just their bodies, but their confidence and mindset as well. And beyond coaching, she's been featured in magazines like Inside Fitness. And she's a leading voice on women's health in particular, tackling everything from gut health and hormone balance to stress reduction and different sustainable fitness strategies. So hopefully we'll touch on a lot of those today. But again, first of all, Tasha, thanks very much for taking the time with us today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, one of the things I like to kind of do is find out a little bit about your journey to here a little bit, because everybody has a different way of getting to where they are today. And I think, you've got that kind of background as well. I mean, have you always been kind of athletic? I know that, you've obviously done lots of things in that space, but, how did you get here? What kind of, path did you take?
Yeah, my path was a little all over the map,
Yeah.
honestly. I have always been a bit of an athletic individual, also very competitive. So I actually grew up riding horses competitively, in show jumping. So I think that's probably where my initial level of discipline and competitive nature came from.
Yeah.
Um, But as you mentioned, I started in the fitness industry in the competitive side of things, doing the, women's bikini division in
Yeah.
bodybuilding shows, which again, just really solidified the level of discipline needed to be successful in that area, but also in a lot of areas of life as well. And I learned a lot from it, but I've kind of taken a total 360 away from the fitness,
Mm,
competitive side of things and gotten much more into, women's health support, balance, because it was such an extreme lifestyle.
mhm.
And although the discipline was a great learning tool, I feel that a lot of it's not sustainable. And even in the mainstream fitness realm these days, everything is a bit male driven, a little bit hardcore, and I feel like it can be misleading and overwhelming for a lot of women to
Mm.
approach it from that way. And that's why so many women fall off or are afraid to begin their fitness journey or their health and wellness journey. So trying to kind of shift the dynamic away from the hardcore to more support, sustainability, and balance.
Yeah.
And with that, healing being the foundation as well.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's why you're a good fit for the podcast in many ways, because we talk a lot about kind of whole life success, and that's also it can sometimes be a life transition piece too, where it's like there's a whole bunch of different things that are happening in your life, and success what people see as success changes a lot over
Yeah.
time as well. So, you obviously have programs that you deal with these things and have clients through that. So tell me a little bit about how did that start? But then also maybe did it evolve over time? Is it something that was your focus, or has that evolved as you've said, as you've kind of taken a look at what's more sustainable and things like that with your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So, where I started was very much focused on transformation. So,
Hmm.
trying to get people to their physical best. But what I noticed over time is that, a big piece of that puzzle was neglecting the mental side of things. The mind-body connection, as we now know, is so, so significant. Another little piece that I forgot to mention was my background was actually in psychotherapy as well. So before I got into fitness, I was a practicing psychotherapist. And that was something that I felt was missing from my coaching with the clients I was working with, is I had this great set of tools from psychotherapy that I didn't really know how I could bring that in or link those two things together. Um, but over time, understanding more about how women's bodies work, what they respond best to, how much dysfunction women live with and don't have support or direction on how to get through it. Everything kind of came together, and I basically built out a package that I wanted to kind of market myself as a one-stop shop because I had the physical transformation in terms of looking your best and feeling confident. I had the mental emotional side of things, so helping people build the tools to, have the discipline needed, but within reason, be able to problem solve, be successful long term. And then also myself, for more of a personal reason, I really got into the health side of things. So dealing with the functional health, the hormones, the gut health, metabolic health, stress management. So it's kind of like bringing three professionals into one,
Yeah.
which is great because then you don't have to be talking to a bunch of different people at one time. There's no conflict going on there.
Mm.
And I have, different modalities that I've learned over the years so that I can pick and choose the things that are going to work best for each individual versus saying like, oh, it's a one size fits all, and hoping for the best.
Yeah, well, and that I think is important too, that you've got these different things to draw upon, which everybody's kind of trying to figure out is what are the right things to do physically, what are the right things to do from whether it's a mindfulness or even just a mindset kind of perspective. How has that been with your clients, knowing that that's probably evolved over time too? Have you seen better results now that you're able to kind of figure out how to flex those with your different clients? Has that improved their results as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I find that people are a lot happier overall.
Mm.
Um, Again, like some people really still want to go through that radical physical transformation.
Yeah.
The issue that I see with that, especially with women, is that once you go through it, there is more often than not kind of a negative aftermath. So they'll either go back to the way they were, sometimes they'll go back to something worse because the methods aren't sustainable and they're not actually addressing a lot of the root issues that women deal with.
Yeah.
Um, so shifting away from that and kind of focusing on the healing as the foundation of your transformation first
Hmm.
is so much better. And then again, you're just like you're building someone up internally to be successful in more than one way. So they're going to see that they feel better. They're going to be more confident about how they look. They're going to have better energy. They're going to have better function. It's just going to translate to so many different areas of their life. So yeah, it's I think definitely overall more successful treating clients that way versus focusing on strictly physical transformations.
Yeah, yeah, that kind of more holistic way of looking at it. And a lot of people, as you mentioned, struggle with the sustainability part of fitness, regardless of what they do, even if they are successful or are just trying to stay on a program for a while so that they do see results. Do you have what are some of the biggest mistakes people make around that? In order to keep something sustainable, and in the past, I think a lot of it has been that if you fall off, that's where people get so upset and it's just kind of that's it, I'm done. Do you have ways or do you have tactics that you think really work, or what is it you see people fall off with?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think setting up a foundation where people know that there is flexibility right off the bat is super important. In my style of coaching, I don't want any client to ever feel like, if they go out for a meal with friends and family and it's like a random day during the week, because so many people have this concept in their head about cheat meals on the weekend, right? So,
Yeah,
you go out on a Monday and you have an outing, whether it's for work or family, friends, whatever. Number one, you don't necessarily have to pick the worst thing on the menu to eat. Number two, it's not going to throw off your entire plan if you go out for one meal. So just having more mindfulness around that balance piece. But the other major thing that I find is so, so important is understanding and being very upfront about this in the beginning as well, is that life is never consistent. There's always going to be ups and downs. There's always going to be things thrown at that you have to deal with. And I find that a lot of people get it in their heads that if you have a plan set out um, for your health and wellness journey
hmm,
and something happens and you can't follow that specific plan to its fullest potential anymore,
yeah,
most of the time they'll just throw their hands up and give up. But what I like to do is reframe and say, let's talk about this. Let's talk about what's realistic for you right now. It's funny, my coach and I were talking about this the other day. We call it BAM, so bare ass minimums.
yeah,
What are the bare ass minimums that we know we can still sustain while you're dealing with X, Y, and Z that are going to allow you to still function and feel okay? Because if we just throw our hands up and say, screw it all, you're going to get to a really shitty place and it's going to make things a lot worse. You're not going to be able to cope as well because you're going to feel awful. So, how can we take care of like our basic function and just step back a little bit? That's okay. Like, and in times of stress and things that are beyond our control, sometimes we need to take a step back and just say like, okay, that can go on the back burner a little bit right now because if I'm trying to do all these things at once, I'm going to burn out. Something bad's going to happen.
yeah.
So how can we manage this and figure out like what's the most important thing to do to take care of me while I get through this, and then maybe I can drive on and push a little harder after.
Yeah, yeah, and actually that leads well into, and maybe I'll start with how do you do this personally? Because I mean, you've got a business, you've got your own, fitness stuff that you do yourself and wellness, and then obviously you probably have social life and all those things you want to fit in there too. So how do you approach, um, whether it's goal setting and those things, so that you do have some of that kind of whole life kind of look to it, or a holistic look to it, and know that things do flex depending on what's happening in your life at any one time. And yeah, how do you approach that?
Yeah, I think goal setting is really great. I also think sometimes it's okay to not have a really solid goal. And people get so focused on, what do I do if I don't have a goal? And feeling like having a goal is the only way to continue to move forward. And maybe, having smaller things could be still considered goals, but I don't think there necessarily has to be this big, extreme, ultimate goal because it can be overwhelming in certain circumstances.
Yeah,
But I like to look at setting small kind of targets to achieve. I think that those also help build confidence over time so that you can start setting bigger goals, whether that's like over a monthly period, 6 months, a year. But, the small goals and the baby steps are what really builds you up to be able to reach the bigger things in the long run.
yeah, yeah. And talking about that, I mean, you have a fitness business. That building that is not easy to do, especially when, if your role is fitness or psychotherapy or whatever it is, the business part of it is probably relatively new when you start that.
Yeah.
So maybe just tell me a little bit about what's that process been like for you, and is there something that kind of stands out as, wow, this was super difficult compared to what I thought it was going to be. What's that been like, building a business aside from, outside of what your core specialization is?
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey. And I think that, in the beginning, I was working with a team of other coaches and I had a mentor through that team. And I learned a lot there about building the business. It was great that I had that experience. And then deciding to go on my own back in 2019 was absolutely terrifying because there was a big risk of losing a certain number of my clients.
Hmm.
What was going to happen? How was I going to manage all this on my own? But, I made the transition and it felt really good to be able to do it on my own. The biggest thing I noticed as years went by is I was continuing to grow and achieve more in my business, but I started noticing that there were certain elements of my business that I struggled with. And eventually started hitting kind of like these roadblocks of, okay, well, what do I do with this? And how do I make this flow a little better? What do I need on the back end to make my business more seamless? What do I need on the front end to continue to get leads, attract more clients, put myself out there in a way that's showing what I have to offer? So last year, just over a year ago, I made the decision to hire a business coach, which
Mhm.
was a huge investment for me. But I knew that in order to achieve more, I was going to need some direction on those little missing pieces in my business that I needed to work on. Just in the same way that someone who doesn't know how to improve their health and wellness needs to hire someone to give them the direction. So that was a really big turning point for me. It was really important to address those things. And I'm really happy that I hired the coach, and it absolutely paid for itself and had a great return on my investment. And now, I'm focusing on my first hire for my business, which will be really cool. Just some future projects that I have coming up in the next year to give a little more or give more options to people that might not necessarily be able to work with me on a one-on-one capacity.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, just things that I would have never entertained in the past or known were available to me, and now having access to that and just continuing to grow professionally, which is
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have, I mean, you have a big influence piece too. So you have a big built community, I guess, that you have developed over time. And maybe how important is that process and building a community around your brand? How important has that been to your business success as well?
It's been hugely important. I feel like, you know, now that my business is established, I do get much more referral based
Mhm.
clients, but initially having that presence on Instagram and just being able to share your message to such a large audience, and it's such a great marketing tool if you use it well. Obviously you can just get so much exposure and again, like get your message across to different people and be able to help different people that find you there. So it's been the reason that I think I am where I am now.
Yeah.
um Moving forward with Instagram has been interesting as well, because I think that a lot of my community was built initially on my more physical transformative
Hmm.
of things, especially when I was competing.
Yeah.
Now shifting away from that and going more into the sort of sharing information, educating, health, wellness, etc. It can
Mhm.
be a little bit of a struggle sometimes finding that balance between the instant gratification of a physical transformation and the knowledge piece.
Mhm.
Uh, so that's been a bit of a growth area for me this year, is just trying to bring those two together in a way that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I can still share my message, but not lose the audience that I had.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's interesting having to kind of bridge that as it
Yeah.
changes over time. So, yeah, and you work a lot with specifically with women's health. Is there something that a topic in that space that you feel just doesn't get enough attention, and is something that you kind of have really focused on because of that? Is there something that you just think that, wow, we should be spending more time talking about this from that perspective?
Yeah, it might feel like a little bit of a general answer, but I feel like women are very complex, especially from hormone side of things. And there are so many different issues that women deal with that are neglected or kind of brushed off, especially by mainstream medicine.
Hmm.
Um, or there's, just like, here, take this pill. And a lot of the clients that I work with are women who have basically been told that they're going to have to live with whatever condition for the rest of their lives, because there's no real solution, or you're just going to take a medication or whatever.
Hmm.
Obviously, I see a lot of this again in the hormone sort of side of things, as well as autoimmune issues, issues that stem from stress.
Hmm.
So, there's a huge there's a lot of neglect around what women can do in terms of changing basic lifestyle habits to feel so much better instead of just being told this is how you are because you're a woman, or there's no answer for this because it's, you have some random disease and we don't really know what to do about it. And
Yeah.
it's really frustrating because I'm like, women don't need to live this way. And there needs to be more support and more direction from people who have the ability to do that. And although I'm not a doctor, I'm not a medical professional, it's been a passion of mine to find solutions for people who are struggling with these issues and help them see that there are answers and there are solutions and you can feel better.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I mean, a lot of that is also just kind of finding some of that information for people or helping them search those things out themselves too, and pointing them in the right direction, right? So, um, and you talked about kind of you've had mentors at different times. You have a coach now, or have had a coach recently. Uh, what kind of role does that play for you? Because is do you usually follow a specific mentor? Are you the kind of person who just kind of has a bunch of people that they kind of pull different things from? How does that work for you, Tasha?
Yeah. So the coach I'm working with now is great because she's actually part of a larger coaching team. So the cool thing about that is she can pull from other people if I need help with, like I had a meeting with the woman deals with sort of the accounting and money management side of things with them. I had a meeting with another woman who dealt with improving your sales call techniques. So I like that approach, and I think that that's kind of the way that I've sort of worked with mentors as well, is wanting to learn from a variety of different individuals. Because again, there is, I find that when you're working with certain professionals, they'll have kind of like a baseline program for everyone, and they might make slight modifications here and there. Whereas I want to try to know as much as I can about as many different approaches so that when I see a certain individual, I can look at them and say, okay, like this is telling me you need a little bit of this one and a little bit of this one. And I can kind of bring pieces in from all these different areas and all these different people I've learned from to really create a customized approach to their healing versus, oh, you have this condition. Well, this is what we usually do to treat that. But what if they have something else over here that's showing up, and how do we kind of bring all that together? So, yeah, the just having as much knowledge as I can from different approaches, different mentors, and then being able to translate that to my work.
Yeah, yeah, great. And just again, pure from the business standpoint of things, do you find like is it easy to find those types of help, I guess, for people who are there's lots of people who listen that are kind of in similar situations to you that are probably entrepreneurs or solopreneurs, I guess, looking to build
Yeah.
their business. Um, is it easy to find kind of how to do that, or was it difficult for you to be able to kind of get yourself through all the different things to find a coach that fits nicely for you, that kind of thing?
Yeah, yeah, it can be tricky, and I think that it goes, um, or it can happen in the business realm and also in the health and fitness industry.
Hmm.
Like any type
Yeah.
of coach that you're working with, it's it's hard, and I don't want to bash people, but a lot of people out there are just trying to make a buck,
Hmm.
and they don't really put the time and energy into caring for the people that they're working with. I did work with a business coach a couple years ago that I felt just kind of took my money and ran, and I didn't really get anything out of the experience that I wanted to. And I was super apprehensive about signing up with my coaching team that I'm with now last year because of that experience.
Hmm.
But what I did was actually interviewed a few business coaches before I ended up going with them. Having had that one bad experience, I really wanted to make sure that I was going to talk to someone who knew what they were doing and that was going to lead me in the right direction and be there for me with what I needed. And I think that that's an important thing to do for anyone, whether, again, you're working with a business coach or a health and wellness coach. Go through a few different options, do your research. And I know it sounds bad, but a lot of times you do get what you pay for. So if you see someone that's got some crazy offer, think about why. Like, are there transformations or what their quality of work that they're doing? Is it not that great? Do they not really have a lot of clients? Are they new to the industry and they just don't have the knowledge and expertise to guide you in the right way? Um, so yeah, it's worth waiting and taking your time to find the right person instead of just diving right in and working with someone because they have a good image or a good, sales pitch for you.
Yeah, I think that's great for people to hear. I think for all of those different things, whether it's for a health and wellness coach that maybe is it a very canned thing that they're just kind of picking something up that's, that's the exact same thing regardless of who you are and all
Yeah.
those differences in your life. But also in different businesses and everything else, it's very broadly applicable, I guess, to make sure that you kind of connect with them and see if it fits for you. So super important
Yeah.
there. One of the things that we do with everybody is kind of have a couple of things to leave with the audience, but I know that they've probably already got a few of those things already today because you've shared some great stuff but maybe going back to some of the things that you specifically do with some of your clients, and one of the things that is isn't talked about probably enough, but people are concerned about is gut health is one thing that you kind of talk about a fair amount. And I know they can probably find a lot more information if they talk to you afterwards, but maybe are there a couple of tips on if people are just trying to kind of figure out, are there a couple of things I could do quickly that maybe make an impact quickly? Do you have any tips from that perspective, Tasha?
Yeah, I would say when it comes to gut health, because there are so many triggers out there,
Hmm.
it's really about a process of elimination. And the more that you can get rid of from your diet initially, the faster you're going to go through the healing process. So it is a little bit generic sounding, but looking at kind of the big things that tend to be problematic, like, processed dairy, gluten, sugar, alcohol, stuff like that, cutting out all those things, even like artificial sugars, carbonated drinks, just starting to get rid of as much as you can out of the diet and bring it back to the basics, like proteins, fruits, vegetables. Carbs are fine if they work well for you, but again, we're getting into like kind of specific individual territory. But
Yeah.
try to pay attention to how you react to things. If you notice that you feel more uncomfortable, bloated, gassy, indigestion after meals, look at what you were eating and maybe try to pull that out for a little while and see how you feel without it. But I do feel that, somewhere along the way, dieting became the abnormal thing when back in the day we did follow very basic foods to
Hmm.
eat on a day-to-day basis, and now it's kind of flipped the other way where we're eating these crazy over the top things that are highly processed,
Hmm.
and dieting's abnormal. So I think we need to kind of flip that dynamic and go back to the basics. Let go of that idea that it's a diet, because it's not really a diet. You're eating whole foods the way
Right.
nature intended them to be. So,
Yeah.
yeah, focusing on just getting back to nutrient focused foods, just break it down into the most basic form. Um, and it might be an adjustment. It's hard. I think the biggest thing is mentally letting go of that stuff. But in the long run, if you can embrace that lifestyle, you're going to feel so much better. And that's not to say that you can't have more flexibility eventually, but in order to heal the gut, you do have to do a bit of a reset to get things going again.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a great way to put it about the kind of the whole food approach. That it's really that's just getting rid of the other stuff. It should be more of what the diet is. Like it's just that instead we're just getting rid of all this stuff that we've created over time a little bit. So it seems like almost all of these things somehow come down to trying to get to a whole food approach as much as possible. So
Yeah.
um, really interesting. So if people, I'm sure, are going to want to, if they aren't already following you, they probably want to follow you and find out more about, what you can possibly do with them, and also even just kind of some of the information that you put out there. So what are the best ways to be able to kind of follow you and follow some of your programs and fitness stuff as well?
Yeah, so obviously my Instagram is my main hub. So
Mhm.
it's at Tasha_Star_fitness on there. I, regularly check my messages on there, so you can always get in contact with me there, get in contact with me on there. Email as well is a great way to get in contact with me, and that's no underscore, so just TashaStarFitness@gmail.com. My website is currently under construction, or more of a facelift, we'll say, but that would be also starlifestyle.ca, to get more information there.
All right, and we'll put all of those links in the show notes as well. So if you didn't get that, make sure that you go into the show notes, or right under the description there. We'll have all the links there. If you haven't hit subscribe on the podcast, do that now, because we have great people every week, just like Tasha. And again, I know you've probably got lots of things going on right now, Tasha. So thanks so much for openly sharing all this stuff, and just being here with us today. Really appreciate the time.
Of course, thank you so much again for having me.
All right. And everybody else, we will talk again soon on Big Idea, Big Moves.